during my postdoc, I was very much sat and thinking, what do I enjoy about this part of the life? And it was very much kind of going to conferences, speaking to people, and in some ways actually troubleshooting all our students' problems in the lab, saying, okay, well, we can try this and that'll take us down these different avenues and we'll see if that solves the X, Y, or Z problem. And then I saw this job where I work now at MGI as a sales representative in next generation sequencing, which is a technique that I've used a lot. I know it pretty well. And it's something that gets me excited as well. I think it's a really cool technique. And to be able to sell those machines, I thought, oh, well, that's quite a good career opportunity for me to explore.
Well, this is going to be a great episode. We've got Owen McIntosh joining us. He has just gotten into sales, left the lab, so he made the trip into the dark side. So we're excited to hear from him and his insights into his new role. Some good stuff though coming up, right, Nick?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Really fun one to do. Owen's a great guy with some great stories, and you should stick around to hear about how he lost his shoe in a puddle.
Oh yeah, that's good. That's definitely a good one. But yeah, we talked a little bit about the transition into sales, different things that you need to consider. And I think most importantly, just put yourself out there and make it happen. So let's dive right in. Hey, Owen, welcome to the show. We're pumped to have you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
So we did prep you and let you know. So every one of these episodes, we start with the same question. What's a crazy or funny story that happened in your career?
So I was thinking I might as well start with the job that I'm actually in now, and I can't have been more than 1 or 2 weeks into starting when this happened, and when you sort of start a new job, you're not linked into all of the email threads. So I'd missed a meeting that had started at 7 o'clock in the morning, sort of on our European side. So I went out for a run at probably about 7:30, got back in at 8, and it was a 2-hour meeting. As I do when you come in from a run, like I was a bit sweaty, so I took my top off and I saw a text from a manager saying, oh, there's this meeting you weren't invited to. It'd be really great if you could hop onto it whilst you could. So I was like panicked, ran upstairs, got to my computer, and then when you're in a bit of a panic and you're starting to go through all the processes, so like, right, I'll turn my computer on, switch my camera off, and then join the meeting, and then I can get dressed or whatever and partake in it there. And so I was doing that, and then you sort of so focused on that task that you've set for yourself, you don't really notice any deviations. So for some annoying reason from this one meeting, the camera was actually defaulted to turn off. So as I was going through the process, turn the camera on, join the meeting, I just see sort of me sat there topless in this meeting of about 80 people in there. Not 1 or 2 weeks into the job, I was like, it was recorded as well, so I got a few of my colleagues saying, "We've just seen you topless in the recording." So yeah, that was a great introduction to the European team.
Awesome, and I guess you're fairly early in your career, yes. You're going to find out whether that helps your probation period or hinders it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that is too funny. I feel like that was pretty common, especially like early in the pandemic. There was a lot of people forgetting what to do with their camera and whatnot. So that's funny. Great way to introduce yourself to the team. Hey, everybody, I'm Owen.
At least it was an accident and not just some weird kind of alpha male kind of move or whatever. I'm here to dominate. No, it wasn't that. It was definitely an accident.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dig into it. So you are 5 months into sales, coming out of the lab. Would love to hear your story. There's a lot of people out there that are kind of thinking about this sort of transition, just made the transition. What prompted you to get into sales, and what learnings can you share with everybody?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I mean, there's a bit of background. I did my PhD in plant biology. Or sort of extremophile plant biology, algae, really, if you count them as plants or not. There's a big kind of debate in that world. Yeah, and then I went on to do a postdoc after doing a brief stint in. I actually, between my PhD and my postdoc, I worked in a COVID testing lab as well. And I just kind of, doing my postdoc, I was kind of reaching a point where I just thought, I don't see myself going much further here. I wasn't really enjoying the academic lifestyle. It was kind of a bit slow paced, I guess, really. And what I really missed was actually working in this COVID testing lab in some ways. The 12-hour shifts were horrible, but I actually did sort of miss that almost target-driven environment. And it was just fast-paced. You had the process, you work through it, and you see the results at the end of the day. It's like, oh, wow, we got through 10,000 tests in a 12-hour shift. Like, well done. That's a great result. So during my postdoc, I was very much sat and thinking, what do I enjoy about this part of the life? And it was very much kind of going to conferences, speaking to people, and in some ways actually troubleshooting all our students' problems in the lab, saying, okay, well, we can try this and that'll take us down these different avenues and we'll see if that solves the X, Y, or Z problem. So so that was kind of. And then I saw this job where I work now at NGI as a sales representative in next generation sequencing, which is a technique that I've used a lot. I know it pretty well. And it's something that gets me excited as well. I think it's a really cool technique. And to be able to sell those machines, I thought, oh, well, that's quite a good career opportunity for me to explore.
And did you purposely look for something that was selling a product that you or a service that you previously used? It's like you were familiar with it, or did you just kind of like stumble upon it?
I kind of stumbled upon it. I don't know whether that's sort of a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Did you guys look into products you'd known when you first started,
Well, I could tell you.
Sales?
I have a sort of slightly infamous story that I won't go into here because anyone listening to the podcast will be sick of it at the end of it. But I accidentally fell into sales just because I needed the job. I didn't want to do it. So my follow-up question was going to be, like, what would your advice to be people in the lab about this? Because I don't think many lab scientists believe being in sales is very scientific, and I've personally found the opposite. So I'd like your view on that for other people.
No, absolutely. I mean, especially coming as a person who's used our competitors' sequencers, I know the sort of downsides of it, using it on a day-to-day basis as well. I was sort of very much getting frustrated with the same problems I know my customers are having. So that's, even just from that perspective, it's quite useful going into a sales role. But actually, like you said, you do use the science background, like selling a next generation sequencer, you've got to know how the chemistry works. Otherwise, you're not gonna convince the customer that your chemistry and sequencing technology is better than the competitors. And it's very much, you go and talk to people. From my experience anyway, where I have the most productive conversations is looking and sort of seeing what problems they're having. And if I didn't have that scientific background, it would mean nothing to me. I wouldn't know what solutions really to bring them.
And I imagine too, something like NGS has a lot of different, applications in which like the people you're talking to are studying different things, different research areas, therapeutic focuses, whatever it might be. So you actually, I imagine you get to talk to a wide range of different types of people as well, right?
Yeah. That's, so I did my undergrad in plant biology, and then my PhD in plant biology. So I've gone really down a narrow sort of plant biology route. So it's very cool actually, broadening my scientific knowledge now. It's kind of reinvigorated my passion for science in many ways, and you get to see all this cool stuff happening across the board rather than in one very sort of small area in the world. So yeah, no, that very much like but then it is tricky. So, you talk to some scientists and they'll go, I'm looking at X protein, which interacts with X molecules and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're really going to have to dumb it down to me. I've not touched human biology since A-levels. Like, I'm an idiot when it comes to human biology.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. If you could do us a quick favor and share it with someone you know, it would mean the world to us. If you want to uplevel your sales skills or just network with other life science sales reps, check out the Succession community at succession.bio/join. Okay, now back to the show. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I want to know, we've briefly touched on it in a previous conversation about the extremophile stuff you worked on. We'd love to maybe hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I worked primarily with acidophiles and metallophiles, so they grow in really acidic conditions and really high sort of metal concentrations, which makes, sampling was great. I worked at a place called Paris Mountain. I think they filmed the scene from the Mortal Kombat film there, where it's sort of supposed to be a Martian scenery, because you have all this iron exposed to the surface, and it's these beautiful hues of red. And then some, I think there's a lot of copper and cobalt in there as well. So you get if sun hits it right, it's a really gorgeous place. But I do remember one time I was going sampling and my foot slipped into a pond that was about pH 1. I just bought some new walking boots, and by the time I came back, like the sole had just completely come detached. It just melted all the glue. So it comes with some hazards as well. But it's crazy that these organisms can live there, and that's their actual happy environment. If you try and grow them in sort of neutral waters, they just completely die, really. So yeah, it's very much a cool area of science that we get lots from. All of the enzymes that your cold washes, that they come from organisms that grow in cold environments. So those enzymes are there to break down materials in their environment. Sorry, explained that really badly there, but do you guys come across much extremophiles in your line of work? Or
I was about to ask that question to you. Like, now you've changed fields, do you see any of your customers working with either like a byproduct or an enzyme of an extremophile? What come to mind for me is not an extremophile, but like in the PCR reaction, right? It has to happen at colder temperature. Do you come across those kind of things that you've spotted and overlap?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of everywhere. Like you said, PCR, I don't know a single lab that doesn't really do PCR these days. It's completely widespread. To be honest, I don't know. I don't come across many since I've started working, because it's NGS. We mainly target core facilities, so we're very much working with the people who run the sequencing. But it's always a passion of mine. I'm very much kind of always trying to go to these crazy places and like, hey, do you guys potentially be interested in a sequencer, and see where some of the cool labs that I kind of can go and nerd out to when I'm working at the same time.
Yeah, I'm going to be on high alert to see if I can spot the use of extremophiles in any other biotech. I just need to spot the overlap. I'll let you know if I see any.
Yeah. There must be some. I mean, all of this biofuels, really, at the moment, that's kind of I don't know if you guys come across biofuels much in your line of work, but
not as much. Mostly human related therapeutic type stuff is mostly where we're focused on, or most of the people that we probably work with. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I can't. Again, as I said, I'm not a sort of human biologist, so it's very much just putting my foot into that world and actually learning what they do.
Well, that's a good segue. So how do you come up to speed on that type of stuff, right? So okay, you were in the lab, you were studying plants for so long, and you got your PhD in plants, right? Haven't done human biology in a long time. So how do you come up to speed on that? Is it because I can imagine that can be somewhat overwhelming for a lot of other people that maybe came from a plant background, and it might be a big hill to climb to try and think about how do you apply it to the human biology side.
I don't know. I don't think I fully have that answer yet, to be honest. I'm still very much going through that. I mean, the best way I sort of learn at the moment is I'm a bit shameless, and I'll just say, look, I'm very sorry, I don't know what you're on about. Can we dumb this down a little bit? And that most people are very sort of open to that. I think you know, as a scientist, people know that they're very, very clever in their aspect of the world, and it's, a lot of them are teachers. Or if not like at universities lecturing, they are sort of teaching people coming up through the lab, working those processes that might be quite new to these techniques and stuff. So, yeah, it's very much people are quite open to teaching you and letting you know, going back to basics.
I think it's really important to call out because a lot of like more junior people are scared to ask those questions because they get, say they're newer into sales. They feel like they have to be the expert on every piece of science that exists or know every keyword that comes up. And so there's it's like being shy isn't the right term, but they're tentative. They're not going to ask these types of questions, and it's clear, right? If you just ask, most people are nice enough to explain their complex science that they're doing that they know really well.
I think that I was going to say something similar. And we're both speaking at the same time. It's a really important point, and I've seen it a lot from reps. I think the important bit you need to know is like you're talking about sequencing, right? You know this in and out, and you know the chemistry of it because you've used it. So recognize the area in that sort of like niche or niche, if you're Harrison, and make sure you can add value in that space. And don't be shy to ask support outside of it. As long as you've got your area nailed down and you can add value, you can learn the other stuff on the fly. And as you're learning it, you bring the knowledge back and add it into other conversations, and you over time build more value. So like, and you see the more senior reps, and you can see them walk into one meeting in one day and they didn't know something. And by the end of the day, they'll ask the same question later that day and they can repeat it, add value to the customer. And it's like a skill it's a muscle you flex over time.
Absolutely. I don't know about how you two felt sort of starting in the sales world as well, but this is something I've kind of going through detached from science. Is, I've seen in the films and that kind of stuff, people talking about Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. I was aware of that and go. And then in one meeting, someone started saying H1 and H2. I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I couldn't. I was just like, sorry guys, what do you mean by H2? It's like, oh, it's the half. But like, I don't know whether that's just the films and TV that I watch where they've not talked about it, or it's not as popular. It doesn't have that same resonance as Q3 or whatever. But yeah, it's very much the business lingo that I'm learning at the moment. That's
and it changes company to company. Actually, yeah. No one keeps it. Like H1, H2 probably stays the same, but there'll be other ones that they just throw in, and you go somewhere else, especially as this is your first commercial role. And you'll throw something out thinking it's normal parlance, and everyone will look at you like you're an alien. So yeah,
it's all the TLAs, right?
Yeah,
all the TLA, 3-letter acronyms.
It's interesting as well because I was at speaking of different companies, different lingos. I was talking to some people at a downpoint at a conference I was at the other week, and they were sort of saying, oh, so are you business development? I was like, no, I'm a sales representative. And they were like, but that's us. We're sales representatives. And even in our company, we've got sort of a salespeople and then business development as a sort of different part of the sales process. So that was a bit eye-opening. I was like, eye-opening for me.
I have a theory on this, and Harrison can tell me if I'm wrong or not. I think the Americans see it as much more distinct roles than the Europeans do. We tend to use BD and rep as an interchangeable term, right? Whereas what I've seen in American companies, and I've a smaller experience in this than Harrison, is that business development doesn't really have a target. Their role is to go out and build connections, collaborations, and larger deals and things like that. Whereas reps have got their target and they've got to sell stuff on a quarterly basis, right? That's
different targets. Yeah. It's not like it's less of like a quota per se, like you might have for a rep who's selling products. They're typically going out doing partnerships, maybe working on like tech, like, hey, we might want to bring this technology in-house. Like, how can we license it? It might be setting up a larger strategic partnership with like a government agency, something like that, just all sorts of different types of things. But I think the BD that I think of is more partnership focused, where sales rep is more like product service focused. But
But
yeah, I've also seen it all be interchangeable where you're a sales rep and they're called business development. So it's just like, yeah,
and in a smaller company, you generally do both. So unless you've got a big enough company that you've delineated the groups anyway, you'll do both. But yeah, it definitely you get called a BD or a rep, and it can be interchangeable. But they're in theory, there should be distinctly different roles.
Yeah, no, that's kind of the understanding that I've kind of came to as well. But then there's sometimes where I'm talking to people as well, and it's kind of, I can't do anything for you, but actually maybe I pass it on to BD now because they can potentially take that even further.
Actually, I kind of like where we're going with this. You got any other kind of like questions that are top of mind as you're navigating your role?
Loads. It's loads, but nothing comes to the top of my head. It's very good point. Yeah, I mean, a whole list of definitions of these TLAs would be brilliant. Maybe that's not podcast material. It could be a bit dry, but rather than a spreadsheet.
One whole episode on defining TLAs.
You can start on the community though, where everyone can add their TLAs and explain them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I don't know. To be honest, I don't know much about your guys' background. I've come from a very scientific background, but it's hard to kind of transition to learning more about business as a whole. Like, there's very much the point in me now where I'm reaching. This is something that I'm enjoying, that I'm probably going to continue pursuing. I might need to do an MBA or something to actually understand about the wider business world, really. But I don't know, what was your guys' opinion on it? How did you learn these sort of wider processes?
I mean, I think an MBA sounds good, I think, in theory, but I don't know that it's always necessary. So I think there's going to be certain things that you'll be able to pick up on the job that you're going to, you'll just learn as you go. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of different like courses and training out there on sort of either like how to get into sales, sort of like the terminology, the lingo, the tactics around sales. You could go deep onto an MBA, but then you can also do like, there's all sorts of like free content out there as well, just on like business in general, and sort of like how businesses function. Like if you wanted to learn like P&Ls, like profit and loss statements, and just kind of how money flows in and out of a business. Like these are all things that you can pretty much find online. Which that's kind of my opinion. I don't know that you necessarily need to do an MBA, and that shouldn't always be like somebody's first thought if they're trying to figure out how to get more business acumen. But yeah, I definitely see it as a gap from coming from the sciences into business. There's like that learning curve that has to happen.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I'd say that MBA is great. I don't have one. I don't intend to get one now. But I think Harrison's point is great. But if you're going to stay at one company and it's quite a large company and you're in a particular niche, then it's going to be hard to learn from others all of the stuff that you would find within an MBA. But if you eventually think that you'll go to smaller companies that do different things, you'll get involved. Like in a smaller company, you'll regularly have to have a finance meeting, so you'll be involved in all of these things. Then actually you can learn them during a process of just learning, of being in your career. One thing that you do, I've heard you get from an MBA, if you go to a very good university to do it, like if you do the Judge Business School at Cambridge, for example, the network you get alone is worth the money. So the people in the room that are going to be higher progressors in business is worth the money, I've heard. But yeah, maybe the time is it worth the time as well?
So is that how you guys sort of feel like you've learned those wider business practices, just sort of working these smaller companies and being sat in on the other sort of strategy planning?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if you do think about startups, it is great for that because it's probably more work, I would say, but it's you get to wear more hats, and so you get more exposure to different areas of the business. You get to work with more cross-functional teams, so that can be great for that.
I always make the comment of if you work in a small startup below 50 people, on one day you're going to be asked to change the bins because someone's busy, and then the next day you're asked to present to the board, right? And if you're happy doing everything, you will learn everything.
That's good. Yeah, I've never actually thought about it in that way before in a startup. I guess like I'm a bit too early in my career to go and work for a startup where it's probably a bit more high pressured. I've not got anything really to back myself saying, yeah, I can sell for you, where it's really crucial in a startup.
Yeah, I would say the other big difference is the cross-functional nature of what happens in a startup, where you really get access to different teams. And I think if you're newer into your career, like, it sounds like you've got a pretty good like idea, like you're really liking sales, but maybe not everybody kind of has that same feeling and they're not sure. Sometimes at a startup, it can be great because you can get into that company and then be able to see, you can be more involved in other elements of the business to determine, maybe it's marketing, maybe it's product, maybe I would rather be in technical support, whatever it is. So you can kind of get a feeling for what is the right role as well.
Yeah, and one thing that Harrison and I have spoken about on other podcasts and talked to various people about is the silos and lack of communication between like operations and marketing and sales. And often if you get blinkered in that in a larger company, you can think, well, marketing have ruined this quarter, they've not helped me, or ops have ruined my pipeline because they've trashed this. Whereas in a smaller company, ops is Paul and marketing's like Tallulah, right? So you know them, right? So you actually get to see where their pain is. And I think that gives you a really good broad perspective of not just assuming like things are going wrong, and actually build those communications in larger companies too.
Absolutely. I think we're in a kind of a unique situation where I work, in that our marketing team is actually, we've got a UK marketing team as well that we work quite closely with. So the actual wider marketing department, I don't really have much to do with on a day-to-day basis, but I work quite closely with our marketing person in the UK. I don't know if that's kind of standard practice. But we kind of got that thing where I'm like, oh, Katie is, I can see the pain she's going through, and it works pretty well for us, I'd say.
But yeah, often they're two separate. People see them as different things, whereas you're all selling.
Yeah, everybody's trying to sell. Awesome. We're coming up towards the end here on time, but would love to maybe get some tips and tricks from you. So you've just recently gone through this process. Anything you want to share with, say, somebody who might be in the lab today that is, thinking about making a transition? Any kind of, tips and tricks you might want to give them?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether this is kind of a bit of both before the job interview or after. You've got the job, but very much don't really be afraid. It's kind of, you've just got to go for it. And I don't know whether it's like a personality flaw or like a human behavior, but I before every call I still get pretty nervous, and then as soon as they pick up, you kind of just hit your stride. And I've made an idiot of myself many a time on the calls, and some just still come out well. It's but it's just sort of putting it out there, and it becomes less and less scary with each call, really, or each meeting. I think conferences are a great way to kind of overcome that as well. Is it's kind of like speed dating. Turnover's massive, and you don't really have time to reflect on where you went wrong. You're just straight into the next pitch, and it's so yeah, it's just very much. Or even if you don't know if you will enjoy it, it's if you dip your toe and just go to. That's what I did. I just went to my interview, and I kind of got sold on A, the job, and B, the company. And actually I was like, oh, well, let's go for it. Just to see how it goes. I could probably still get a postdoc now if I wanted to go back. 5-6 months out of science isn't going to be a killer. Just give it a try.
I love that mentality. It's like, go take the leap, do it if you're thinking about it. And worst come to worst, you can always fall back and go back into the lab if you want.
Yeah, that's good. You've been a fun guy. Sorry, I had to make the joke. But the post
Which one?
Yeah, that's awesome. Owen, it's been a pleasure. On that note, we're gonna cut Nick off. And, no more of those jokes.
Could that one be edited out?
Yeah.
No, we're keeping that in for sure. Well, thank you, Owen. It's been awesome having you here. You'll hopefully, other people have gone through the same, process as you, thinking about their transition into sales. If they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Oh, good question. LinkedIn or my email. I don't know what's the best way to put my email on there.
LinkedIn. We get you
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is probably the best. So yeah, find Owen on
my
LinkedIn, reach
LinkedIn.
out,
Yeah,
send him a DM, get in touch, ask him all the questions you've got.
yeah, sure, absolutely. Please feel free.
Awesome. Thanks, Owen.
Thanks a lot, guys. Really great to be here.